Secretary Maria Catalina E. Cabral, Assistant Secretary Gilberto S. Reyes, Assistant Secretary B. Elizabeth E. Yap, Assistant Secretary Maximo L. Carvajal, Assistant Secretary Antonio V. Molano, Road Board Executive Director Mr. Luisito V. Clavano. Thank you.
Thank you for, we thank you for your graciously hosting us here today. I'd like to begin with like to present, give you some on our 2019 proposed budget. So we can start the presentation. Here, just some basic facts about the DPWH. Of course, I'll be brief with this: the mandate, the planning of infrastructure, national roads, bridges, flood control, water resources. As you can see, this is the condition of our Philippine road network, which at this point is 32,868 kilometers of road, 94% paved. Primary is 99.99%, secondary 94.91%, tertiary 90.41%, and local roads 18.85. Of course, it should be noted that also there's, in terms of monitoring the local roads, it's not as accurate as we do with the national roads. So these are our assumptions. But it should be also noted that the national road network is also, every year we nationalize certain roads. So it's also a moving target. So we'd like to go to the budget. As you can see, we've been steadily increasing with reaching a high of 650.87, and next year we're proposing a lower. We were given a lower budget ceiling due to the shift to a cash-based budgeting system, whereas previously we had an obligation-based that was 2 years. Last year we shifted to a obligation-based that was 1 year, with a 1-year lapsing period, and by next year we will be shifting to a cash-based, wherein the plan is, or the assumption under the assumption is they'll be given the fund will lapse in a year, or with perhaps a grace period. So next slide, the DPWH expenditure program. As you can see, the general administration supports 10.428 billion, support operations 50.047, total operations of 484.047, with the total budgets 544.521. Next. DPW operations by operating office. As you can see, in 2018, again, there's a decrease from 280.678 to 199.598. Our capital outlay went from 403.42 to 301.5. Again, 0.508. Again, this is because of the shift to the cash-based system from the obligation-based. Here we have a breakdown of the capital outlays. National highways 47.1%. The major components of national highways and the flood controls is 21.9%. The rest are we have right-of-way, contractual obligations 5.7%, FS, PDE 1.5%, local infrastructure projects 3.9%, various other infrastructure local projects 16%, PPP 2%, National Building Program 1%, and others 0.8%. Here is another, again, you can see the decrease in our capital outlays. Our current operating expenditures also. Our MOE went from 16.54 to 12.76. Also, MVUC went down from 1.92 to 10.37 billion for a grand total of 555.67. Here we have the breakdown per distributional budget by region. The NCR is 7.63% at 34.9 billion. Southern Luzon is 22.2% at 101.5. Visayas 70.2 at comprising 15.35%. Northern Luzon 99 billion comprising 21.65%, and Mindanao the largest is 33.16 with 151.6 billion. This is to give you an idea for our fund utilization. We'll start with the obligation rate. As you can see, this is the increase. We had last year we had focus on the increasing the obligation rate because of the 1 year lapsing period. So as you can see, last year we hit 92% obligation rate, which is the highest so far in the department. We were able to obligate 621.9 billion last year. This year, we're already at almost 80% obligation rate. That's as of July 31. So with 5 months to go, we're already practically at 80%. So we're ahead than last year. These are the allotments, the breakdown of our allotments, comprising of the regular agency fund and, of course, our transferred appropriation. These are funds downloaded to us by other agencies. As you can see, the DepEd, DA, the SRA, bulk of which is the DepEd. Okay, next slide. Okay, here, this is the year. This is how we prepared a year-on-year, just so you know how we're how it's going from obligation based from last year. Same period last year, January to July, we had obligated 364.7. Same period this year, we've obligated 539.3. That's a 174.8 increase in obligation. So that's where I got the 79, almost 80% obligation to date. That's an increase of 48% from obligation, and our allotments also increased the same time period by 21%. This is the disbursement rate. Basically, the obligation is when it's bid out. The disbursement's the actual disbursement of funds. This is a year-on-year comparison. 2017, at this point, last year, at this point, we had disbursed 191.8. Same time period this year, we've disbursed 316.2 billion. That's an increase of 124.4 billion year on year. Okay.
We'd like to recognize the presence of, well, first, I'm not sure if I recognize Senator Lacson. I'm sorry if I missed that. Came at 9 o'clock. And Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator J.V. Ejercito. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And we'd like, I'd like, excuse me, like to just give you an idea of the major programs and how the budget is broken down in terms of these major programs of the department. I'll start, of course, with the traffic decongestion program. As you can see, from 2017, we increased it to in 2018 at a high of 149.7 billion. This includes high standard highways, expressways, bypasses, interchanges, diversion roads, all contributing to traffic decongestion, which, as we know, costs us, we've heard the numbers, 2.4 billion pesos a day in the Philippines. So it's paramount that we invest heavily in this traffic decongestion. As you can see, 2019, again, it went because of the cash-based system. We had to rationalize the budget based on cash disbursement and not on based on obligation. So it's 103.3 billion for 19, our proposed. Next slide. Integrated transport system, that's the construction and improving of roads leading to growth networks. This includes the connectivity, inter-island bridges. Again, it's, as you can see, it was 2018 101.5, and again with the cash base, it's with the rationalization of cash base, it's at 70. Our proposal is 76.7 billion for next year, for 2019. Convergence and railroad development program. As you saw on the slides earlier, many of the national roads have already been paved. At this point, we also want to give support to various other priorities in the government, such as trade and industry, also DOTR, Department of Tourism. So with the help of these agencies, they help us identify certain projects that would be of high value, and this allows us to develop those rural roads, even if they're not national roads. Just recently, we created a new convergence program, the TICAS program, within coordination with the Department of National Defense, wherein they can identify projects within Army camps that are of high value and that the DPWH will be able to fund. So this goes to the upgrading also of our military establishments. At the same time, it's also an investment, we believe, in peace and order. And in this program, we can see in last year, well, from 2017, it increased to 49.8 billion from 18.1. And in 2019, after the rationalization, we're proposing 31.4 billion for our convergence and rural road. Of course, being one of the most susceptible countries to natural calamities, we also have as our priority the livable, sustainable, and resilient communities. This is mostly to mitigate natural calamities. This includes flood mitigation structures, water impounding, rehabilitation of existing bridges to make them more resilient and seismic rated. So you can see the budget, our proposed budget for 2019 is 152.7 billion from 165 last year. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of some of our major flood control programs, we have a short list here. This includes the Pasig River Channel, Phase 3. Just recently, we inaugurated a large portion of this project in Marikina, in Pasig. Also, we have not just in Metro Manila, but of course, we have master plan projects in Cagayan, Tagaloan, Imus Rivers. We're starting this year the integrated disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation measures in low-lying areas of Pampanga Bay. This is a master plan project designed to mitigate the flooding in those areas, which we know is very flood-prone. So that's starting 2018 to 2022. Of course, Cagayan de Oro River, that's a continuing project. And also we have a new project that we're proposing to mitigate the flooding in areas near Cotabato City, in the Ambal-Swimway River and Rio Grande, Mindanao River Control Basin, riverbank protection. That will start next year at a cost of 39 billion. You can see up here a picture of the Leyte Tide Embankment project. This is 31.28 kilometers long at a project cost of 7.9 billion. We've already funded about 3.6 billion pesos of this project. As you can see, it's designed so that if God forbid there are any storm surges, the magnitude of the effect will not be repeated from what happened in Yolanda. So that's the actual project on the screen. Next slide. Nationwide evacuation centers. This is we designed this program for all regions will have a world-class design evacuation center. What we want to avoid is the use of other facilities such as schools for long-term evacuation, as they have an effect on of course, on the educational system, the more that we utilize our existing public infrastructures for long term. So with that in mind, we've a total of 4.98 billion has been allocated from 2016 to 2018 for the construction of 137 evacuation centers. As of now, 90 evacuation centers are ongoing and 26 are under 26 are under pre-construction activities and 21 were already completed. Next slide. This is also a recent convergence program, the Roll-It. Previously, there was no convergence with the DTI, but we saw the need to help enhance our industries, therefore spurring job creation. So in 2018, there was 12.56 allocated to these Roll-It, and this is all in support of industries. So this is done with the help of the DTI. And for our proposed for 2019 is 6.83 billion. Of course, the TRIPC, the Tourism Road Infrastructure Program, this is a master plan done with coordination with the DOT, wherein they help identify roads leading to major tourism sites. This is our support for the tourism programs of the government. A total of 65.7 was allocated from 2016 to 2018, and about 2,721 kilometers of road are rehabilitated and upgraded, and a total amount of 18.69 billion is proposed for 2019 for 674 kilometers of tourism roads. And this is our plan for the standard highway network. I think that it's paramount that we finish this high-speed highway network, and we have plans for the major islands. We have one, in Luzon, the major one's the Luzon Spine Expressway network, which is about 834 kilometers long. That goes from Bicol to La Union. But eventually we will extend this to as far as Ilocos Sur. So as you can see, what is the status of this? At this point, the TR4 will start construction this year. The Quezon-Bicol Expressway, the feasibility study will be finished by late this year, the last quarter of this year, and allowing us to start by next year. You can see there when this is done, the travel time from Ilocos to Bicol will be reduced from 19 hours and 40 minutes to 8 hours and 15 minutes. Metro Cebu Highway, this is a 73.75 kilometer high standard highway. This is keeping in mind the continuous congestion in Metro Cebu. We wanted to make sure this has already been funded, and we're starting it this year, our first initial tranche for this. But we will ramp up spending as we move looking forward. A project cost is about 28 billion. We'll be doing it in phases, but definitely it's one of the priorities to decongest Cebu City, and this is one of the major decongestion programs there. Of course, in the major center in Mindanao is Davao, construction of an expressway bypass road with a total length of 86.11 kilometers. And of course, the whole Mindanao region, we have the Mindanao Road Development Network. It's the construction improvement 2,600 kilometers at a cost of 126 billion pesos. We've expanded it to include the whole Zamboanga Peninsula. So this Mindanao Road Development Network covers the whole island of Mindanao, which is the improvement of up to 2,600 kilometers, upgrading of 2,600 kilometers worth of road. We also have a master plan road network for project in conflict-affected areas in Mindanao. This was done with help of JICA, and this includes the Marawi rehab, the Marawi road network, which includes Marawi Ring Road, which is about a 19-kilometer new road opening, and it includes the upgrading and improvement of about 43 kilometers of existing road in the greater Marawi area. And the total project is not just Marawi, it includes a lot of all the conflict-affected areas. So that's a major plan. And here's the actual plan for Marawi. As you can see, the blue, that's a new 19-kilometer ring road that we'll be constructing it's a new road opening that will create a new growth corridor for the greater Marawi area. And what we call the 42-kilometer, the purple, that's the 42 kilometers of Trans Central Road. This is this master plan already is an FS. It's funded, and we'll be starting by this year. We received a grant from Japan also to help with the construction of the Trans Central roads. And another major there, if you see it in the lower left-hand portions, the Malabang Viaduct, which is we will create a viaduct there at a cost of, I think, approximately 1.3 billion pesos, which will also create another artery leading into the greater Marawi area. Metro Manila, one of our major projects is the Metro Manila Logistics Improvement. These are the bridges across Pasig River. Here's a list of, we'll be 12 new bridges across Pasig River. Two of them have just started, the Estrella Pantaleon and the Binondo Intramuros. A third one has already been under construction, is already in advanced stage of construction, which is the Santa Monica Lawton Bridge. There's the Binondo Intramuros Bridge. This was given to us as a grant by the Chinese government. The two bridges are at a cost of approximately 5 billion pesos. The two, and the Estrella Pantaleon. The Estrella Pantaleon will go from a 2-lane to a 4-lane bridge with aesthetic improvements as well. Oh, next slide. And here we have a inter-island link mega bridge project. This is we have a facility from the ADB with IPIF in order to fund the studies, the feasibility studies for all of these. All of the ones that we are targeting to start within, the one that will start groundbreak this year is the Pangil Bay Bridge, by far the longest bridge in the Philippines, 3.77 kilometers long, connecting Misamis Occidental to Lanao del Norte. And of course, an advanced stage of planning also is the Panay-Guimaras Negros Bridge, because the FS is already near completion, and it will be ready for implementation by next year. So this is a 19.2 kilometer bridge connecting the Panay Island to the Negros Island, but stopping at the Guimaras Island, which is about 5 kilometers from Panay. This is what I mentioned earlier, 3.77 kilometers from Tangub to Bod. Travel time from 2.5 hours to 10 minutes. This is just to give you an idea of the accomplishments for the first 2 years. 511 bridges widened, 204 existing bridges replaced, 120 new bridges constructed, and 1,581 bridges rehabilitated and strengthened from July of 2016 to June of 2018. 1,896 kilometers of road widened, 328 kilometers of bypass diversion roads constructed, 393 kilometers missing gaps between national roads, 1,312 kilometers of access road linked to airports, seaports, trade corridors, and other tourism destinations. Next slide. Thank you. And I hope at this point we'd like to thank all the senators for
Thank you,
being here.
Secretary Villar. I've some questions, but I will give the floor to Senator Lacson, who is here at 9 a.m., and who is the acknowledged expert on public works. Public works audit. But before that, may I ask the Secretary the status of the MVUC? I see ED Clavano. I just found out that as of May 29, we've already passed it in the Senate, and there's supposed to be a BICAM. So that's May, June, July, August, September. I don't know what's taking us so long to abolish the MVUC. So before Senator Lacson asks his first question, may I ask the Secretary if he is in favor of the Senate bill passed on the third reading. Passed on third reading, may BICAM na, no? Yes, abolishing the MVUC, but not abolishing the utilization of the fund, because you're a member of the board and it will be lodged in the DPWH. So that there's just one body for the construction, rehabilitation, and all the projects that you've done, because to date, we already have 166.1 billion collected from MVUC, and we know very well that Mr. Clavano is new. It's not him, nothing personal, sir. It's just that it's not been an effective mechanism or institution to serve its mandate. Sorry to say, in my view, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a failed law. It's a failed institution. I say this every year. And so I'd like, as a former lawmaker and member of the House, I'd like to know whether you are in favor of the abolition of the MVUC, and are you ready to accept the funds that will be lodged in your department if and when it is already enacted into law. It's in BICAM stage. Just on record, I don't know what's taking us so long, if there are shadows stopping it because it's been 4 months since the BICAM, and I will talk to the chairman of the Public Works Committee. What's taking the BICAM so long? May 29, June, July, August, 3 months. Bakit hindi ma-abolish? Ang tagal-tagal nang may clamor for abolition. I don't know if my colleagues here agree, but yes, when we're on the floor, there's been, so may we hear from Secretary Mark. As a former lawmaker, first, are you in favor? Second, are you ready to implement part of it, whatever is allocated to you? Then I give the floor to Senator Lacson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just like, well, if I can just update the committee first on the status. We recently wrote a letter, of course, the funds at this point, the DBM has written us that because of the pending law on the abolishment, there has been no release of funds from the MVUC, regardless of whether the board approved the project or not. So at this point, there's no releases being.
How long has it not been released? For 1 year since the bill
Almost
was
a year,
filed?
yes. But as when the bill was filed, while it's ongoing, there have been no releases of funds from the MBUC. So that is the status right now of the funding of the MBUC. Although the MBUC continues with its mandate, which is to identify these projects for these infrastructure projects. But at this point, the funding has not been released. To answer your question about whether or not, what is my personal opinion as a lawmaker, ma'am, as the chairman of and member of the road board, I leave it to the wisdom of the senators and the congressmen to decide on the fate. Myself, if whatever you decide, ma'am, I'm just a humble public servant. Whatever you decide to do with it, I know that you will do what's in the best interest, and we will be ready to, if need be, the DPWH will be
No,
ready.
the official position, not the personal, Secretary Mark. The official position.
My official position is to support whatever you decide.
Public Works, I'm sure during the hearings, which I failed to attend, the DPWH manifested its position on the matter, whether for or against the bill. That's how it goes, as you know, in every hearing.
Yes. So that is our opinion. Again, legislation is really this is a legislative issue, and
Support.
we will support you.
And the fact that it has gone to an advanced stage in BICAM means it will pass both houses, and so we expect a non-release of any funds from the MVUC and to monitor it very closely to make sure that it's followed. Because baka ma-release tapos nakapending yung abolition, right?
Yes. So, well, it's the position of the DBM at this point. Of course, as a member of the MVUC, we've expressed, of course, that there are requests for the release, but we respect the position of government that at this point, because of the pending law, it is not yet in our interest to approve.
Again, nothing personal to the executive director. He's new. I only see him every hearing, once a year, so nothing personal, sir. Okay? It's just really, I don't want to use the words. Okay. Sige. Senator Lacson now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me be the first to express appreciation and as well as my personal commendation to the DPWH family under the stewardship of Secretary Mark for a job well done. What we've seen during the presentation, 80% obligation rate as of July 31, and 48% spike in your disbursement are certainly worth mentioning. So, however, iba yung obligation, iba yung implementation proper. And I will deal with the past, the present, or the current implementation, as well as yung future for 2019. We've seen the NEP, yung presentation. But I assume, as this happens every year, na pagdating sa House, mangled ito eh. Hindi naman talaga ito yung magiging form nito pagdating sa Senate. So, having said that, let me continue trivia. One of the major issues that I raised during last year's interpellation of the DPWH budget was the existence of the 86 billion worth of infrastructure projects with ROW components. All components of the said 86 billion were actually restored when the GAA 2018 was passed. Well, in principle, I argued, as I still do, that the ROW payments should be settled first before we allocate funds or appropriate funds for the actual construction. This has been consistently laid out under special provisions, of the yearly appropriations pursuant to RA 10752 or the Right of Way Act. Malinaw naman ito eh. Specifically, it provides, in the implementation of infrastructure projects, the DPWH shall ensure, it says shall, ensure that all ROW expenses authorized under RA 10752 are settled before commencement of projects. Now, one of the projects put into question last year was the construction of the bypasses, diversion roads, including right-of-way in Sariaya, Quezon, 2nd Legislative District. Obviously, this is pork because nandun mismo sa GAA when this was passed, 2nd Legislative District. The project had a total allocation of 466.8 million pesos under the General Appropriations Act for 3 years. Multi-year project. While this was implemented from 2014 and 2016, so we don't fault you with whatever defects noticed here. I wish to illustrate lang, just to highlight, na yung simultaneous implementation ng ROW payments and civil works, that becomes the cause of delay, if not suspension or abandonment of projects. As a matter of fact, itong project na ito in Sariaya, 466.8 million pesos. Noong 2016, the DPWH requested for further appropriations, only to suspend the project 3 months later. March 2016, this was suspended. My first question is, what is the future of this project? Ang main problem dito is ROW settlement. We'll show you because the members of my staff undertook a case study of the project. They went to the area, talked to the residents, and tried to find out what went wrong. So, with your indulgence, Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues, at saka sa DPWH, may I just show you some clips?
In-interpolate mo kasi. Napitak mo to last year.
Pero inabandon na eh. Suspended.
You showed that. Kanina yun.
Noong March 21, 2016, ay ipinasuspindi ang konstruksyon sa bahagi ng Isabang Bridge 2 dahil umano sa right-of-way issues.
Now, I go back to my question. Ano yung kinabukasan ng project na ito? Because this was suspended in March of 2016. So apparently, walang galaw ito. And there's now a PPP project, toll project ito, the toll road. So baka naging irrelevant na ito, maging useless na itong Sariaya Bypass Road because pag na-construct yung toll road, baka hindi na magamit ito. So 466.8 million pesos gone to waste. 66.8 million.
Madam Chairwoman, this project Sariaya, these bypasses actually have several bypass roads in Quezon, all of various stages of implementation. Every phase presents its own challenges in regards to right-of-way, but I'd just like to start maybe with regards to the Sariaya project with Ms. Regional Director Hebra. He can give you some details about the Sariaya project, as he is the one directly in charge of its implementation.
Yes, thank you. May we hear from you kasi kung 3 years na itong suspended, walang galawan ito. So ano nangyari sa 466.8 million?
Before you answer, we'd just like to know, don't you settle the ROW problem or issues first before you fund and proceed with the project? May we request the answer? Yeah.
Yes, it's all of these projects before they're started, of course, they're under RA 9184. They're called settled. In other words, we can already start construction if there's a permit to enter or writ of possession, not necessarily fully acquired, because there are certain issues that arise that process that we have to go through. But nevertheless, we can start construction if we get a permit to enter from the landowner or a writ of possession from the courts in the case of expropriation. So this is what's provided for under 9184. Now, always before we start the project, we have significant compliance under 9184, and this is part of the regular process that we do. But of course, it's also provided in 9184 that there are problems that arise from permitting, ranging from tree cutting permits to relocation of utilities, and sometimes there might be some complaints from ISF that arise during the process, and these things are not necessarily projected or anticipated at the time of planning. So they're really during the course of the implementation of these projects, there are issues that arise that we don't anticipate, but nevertheless, we have those are the causes for delays. And at
Let's
this
proceed with the answer to Senator Lacson's
Yeah, in this
question.
particular case,
In this
gusto ko-
particular case,
Yeah, gusto ko ring malaman, ano yung mga right-of-way issues that trapped up, ano? Kasi I can see that this is just a representative sample of so many projects of the DPWH na may problema because of right-of-way issues. Please.
Good morning, sir. For this Sarayaya project, I'd just like to inform that there are 6 releases for this Sarayaya bypass. Some section were already completed. This section being shown in the picture is the construction of the Hibanga Bridge with process. The other side becomes inaccessible due to ongoing negotiation with the road right-of-way. We have already negotiated with the owner. Previously, he gave us the permit to enter, but due to the delay in the appraisal, as well as this the part of the owner to provide us the complete documents of their properties, that's a delay as for the acquisition of the road right-of-way. And in fact, there are still 6 landowners who have not provided us for the documents for the first section for us to process their claims. That's why we cannot provide. So, but however, we already completed the parcellary, all those other documents.
Nakompleto yung segments na konkreto ninyo. Pero hindi rin talaga magagamit because of right-of-way issues. Because you failed to settle first, ano? Dapat masettle muna yung right-of-way issues bago sana nag-construct ng road. Otherwise, 3 years nang or 2 years nang suspended ito, March 2016, it's now, September 2018, and hindi lang 6 yung may problema dyan. Please continue the clip. You see? And we'll show you later na yung ibang residents dito, ang nag-settle mismo yung contractor. So we want to find out, ano bang policy dito? Pinapayagan nyo naman mag-settle yung contractor? Hindi ba magsasuffer yung proyekto pagka yung contractor nag-sell out ng certain amount from his own pocket to settle right-of-way issues? While it is the duty, it is the obligation of the DPWH to settle first the ROW issues before undertaking construction of the road projects.
Before, I just like to mention that in RA 918, I just want to say that, in certain projects, there are right-of-way issues that can arise during implementation. In other words, if something comes up that there's an additional claimant to the property, this will cause delays in implementation of right-of-way. It has happened, and sometimes in terms of documentation, there are lapses. Even the owners themselves have lapses in their submission of the proper documentation. We have also, in terms of, sometimes there are delays in terms of course, we have to get from the GFI. We have to get the appraisals from the GFI. So, given the high volume projects, these are. But you're right, Madam Chairwoman. These are challenges that we have, and I think that I'm not saying that definitely this is something we want to improve on. But the reality is there are right-of-way issues, Madam Chairwoman, that can arise later on that we don't anticipate, and this is the cause sometimes for certain. It can come from not necessarily right away. It can even come from permitting issues that come later on. It can come from ISF issues. It can come from peace and order issues. But in terms of the particular right-of-way issues, if we're going to focus on that, there are circumstances that it can occur during the process of that would cause us, especially in the case of multiple claimants, that can happen, and they can surface after or during the implementation of the project, and has happened, and this might be the cause of delays. But again, it's something that we can mitigate if we go through appropriation proceedings. We can. That's why if at some point we go through, I encourage them to go through instead of just negotiation. We can just simply go to the court and. We can go to the court and obtain a writ of possession, and then while the court decision is pending. So that's something that we're more aggressive about doing right now. But anyway, sorry, I'll allow my director to continue.
Yeah, if that's the case, then we're not complying with the provisions of 10752. Kasi maliwanag yung Right-of-Way Act. Sinasabi, the DPWH shall ensure that all ROW expenses, no, are settled before commencement of project. So we're not complying with the law. And I'll show you later, yung pag tumawid tayo sa mga current implementation nyo, ganyan din ang issue lumalabas. Those part of the 86 billion that I tried to amend, no, for deletion, pero na-restore lahat. The same issues.
Sir, in the settlement of road right-of-way, there are two aspects. First, the settlement of the improvements that will be affected, and second is the settlement of the land or the lot.
Yeah, pero maliwanag yung batas, isettle nyo muna, bayaran na muna yung right-of-way, isettle na muna yung right-of-way issues, bayaran lahat, yung mga may-ari, bago mag-start yung project. When you do it simultaneously, all these problems will crop up. All these problems will arise. If we don't change the process, which is, by the way, very clear under the law that Congress passed, talagang uulit at uulit ang mga problema na ito. And then, my other question, ino-authorize nyo ba yung contractor na magbayad, mag-settle ng right-of-way? Kasi doon sila pumipila, yung mga residents doon kay Tantuco. Kasi siya yung contractor dito eh. Sa halip na DPWH, doon daw sila kumukuha ng pambayad. Why is that?
What the contractor has settled or those improvements na affected during sa kanyang execution of the project. These are permanent plants and some temporary structures that have been affected. So these are improvements of the area where the road construction passes by. So, but the improvements, we sometimes, because landowners do not provide immediately the documents that we needed, like the tax declaration for the improvements that they provide, the contractor usually
Director, I'm sorry, you're not answering my question. Ang concern dito
For certain projects, we have reimbursement agreements, especially for the PPPs. We have reimbursement agreements with the contractors. That's documented. So that's also part of the reason why maybe some people are saying that.
but this is not PPP. So bakit yung contractor na nagbabayad? Oh, is that allowed?
Well, with these, for this particular project, I mean, of course, it's not our policy to
Yes.
do that. I cannot speak for what the what the arrangements if the contractor has with some of these people, but it's not part of our main policy to do so. I have to, if there's a particular case here, I'll have to look into that. But as a general rule, it's not our, but I'm just saying that there are cases, especially in PPP, where we do have specific reimbursement agreements. In this particular case, we can look into it, kung
Yeah,
what
please.
what is the particular agreement or what the contractor is doing, but it's not a matter of policy.
Yeah. You know, we don't know those people, ano. Pinuntahan lang doon, spontaneously, sila yung nakausap. And how do you intend to do justice? Mga may-ari ng lupa, may mga titulong pinakita, but up to now, hindi sila nababayaran. And lalo na, nasuspend yung proyekto since March 2016, lalong hindi sila umaasa mababayaran. So kindly look into that, ano. And for future reference, ano, dahil ito, hindi naman to under your watch, ano. And I emphasize that, sige, pakituloy mo nga yung clip.
I'd like to recognize the presence of Senate President Vicente Soto.
Okay, another issue.
Area affected, valuation at amount of claim ay parehas dalawang dokumento. Mapapansin rin na ang ikalawang submission ay meron ng 11 na claimants, samantalang 10 lamang sa unang listahan.
Tanong, paano nyo babayaran si unknown? May amount eh. Paano nyo babayaran si unknown?
In certain cases, when we do the parcellary survey, when we go to the actual site, the owners, for some reason, the owner's not there. So we use either unknown or we even use like a John Doe to represent, not because it's we're funding for unknown, but because at that stage of the survey, we cannot trace the person, but we know that there's an owner and that he exists, and then we can fund the acquisition of the right-of-way.
Well, I beg to disagree kasi kung meron mga dokumento, may pangalan yan. Bakit magkakaroon ng unknown? Sinong babayaran sa unknown? Kasi kung may documents kayo na tax declaration man o titulo man, kailangan may pangalan.
With expropriation cases, when we consolidate it, we depart the amount in the court for the court to decide who the owner is. If there are cases of conflict, maybe in ownership, very specific cases, Madam Chairwoman, it's hard to give generalities, but I'll give you some examples perhaps. If we do an expropriation, and there's a list according to parcellary survey of numerous, in some cases there might be multiple claimants, then we don't know yet in the final how the court will rule, whether or not who the actual owner, what their claims can be. There are different, even some people might not, under the law, might not be entitled to claimant, or they might be claiming it, but they're not entitled under the law. It might be someone else who's the beneficiary. So that is the reason for the use. But definitely, I'd like to reassure the chairwoman that there's before we can release payments, there's a very strict procedure. That's why sometimes we want to be sure. That's why sometimes when we don't specify exactly, it's because it's not apparent. So, but anyway, before we release these funds, we're very careful about the release of these funds, especially now, because we want to make sure that we will not be questioned later on by the COA.
So much for that. And tingnan na lang ito. In fairness to the people who are, who have represented themselves as lawful claimants, kindly look into that, Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we appreciate the extensive studies being done because that also helps us to further improve our performance. So thank you. We thank the committee for
So,
bringing this to our attention.
Sige.
Thank you.
We'll now jump to the present. Noong December 4, 2017, last year ito, DPWH sent a letter addressed to Finance Chairman Legarda, to our Finance Chair, requesting for the restoration of 50.885. Part ito ng 86 billion na pinadelete ko sana. Pero after ng BICAM, na-restore lahat, no? Now, there are issues that are coming up, coming out. Yung 50.8 billion appropriation for civil works, which I raised, no, I initially proposed to be deducted do sa Senate version ng for the 2018 na GAA. Ito yung details of network development projects in Benguet. No? Bliss, ang circumferential ito eh. Bliss is Baguio, La Trinidad, Itogon, Sablan, Tuba, Tublay. No? Dito, makikita natin may mga issues na naman dito. Our team visited some project sites around the Bliss Circumferential Road in order to investigate the status of implementation. Kasi interest ko ito because precisely the reason why I introduced amendment to delete. Kasi alam ko hindi magagawa ito. Now, aside from right-of-way issues, meron pang lumabas na ibang issues dito. That involve slope protection. Okay, please, pakita mo ulit yung, ayan. Kita nyo kung paano nasasayang ang pera. Oh. Look. Sige.
Acknowledge the presence of Senator Cynthia Villar, I believe, to provide difficult interpellation questions for the Secretary. Okay.
Madam Chair, mas takot ako
Please,
kay Senator Villar kaysa yung anak niya. takot sa
She
kanya.
just told me, she just whispered to me, not in the microphone, that the DPWH will not be able to answer her questions.
Ito, look,
Clarification, she
Ito-
wants to
teka,
know what they
balik mo.
cannot answer, kundi baka mapagalitan.
pakibalik mo lang, yan. Ito yung portion, no? Ito yung sa... No, pinabalik ito dahil nga nag-disaggregate yung DPWH and they promised us na isa-settle na yung right-of-way issues. But aside from right-of-way issues, lumabas pa ito. And this reminded me and my staff, doon sa nirescue rin yung kilometer 193 ba yun? Sa Nueva Ecija, yan. Yung 100 meters na road, ano, napondon ito multi-year, 900 million pesos. Ang kwenta nga namin noon, 9 million pesos per meter. But of course, this is sloping ito eh. So, ganong kalaki yung nagagastos. Now, the question arises now, dito sa Bliss project, pakita muli yung kanina. Ayan. Kung hindi mo ginawa yung slope protection, hindi in-address, ginawa kagad yung kalsada, ano mangyayari sa kalsada? Magagamit ba natin yan? Yes. Oh, slope protection comes first. Part ng feasibility study yan, part ng planning yan. Kasi for all you know, baka itatraverse mong road, yung gagawin mong konkreto, baka yung soil liquefaction yan, hindi kayang ma-address, hindi kayang i-correct. So dapat maghanap ka ng bang ruta na medyo matatag yung lupa, hindi mag-erode. Look, under construction itong kalsada, and yet tatabunan ng lupa. Walang slope protection kasi nauna na naman yung construction. And this is current, ha? This is, ito yung naging subject ng discussion natin during my intervention last year sa budget ng DPWH. Kaya nga pinapadelete ko sana ito. Pero sabi niyo, sige, we'll proceed. We promise to settle or at least ROW issues had been settled already. It appears now, not only yung ROW issues ang hindi settled, mamaya papakita ko rin yung mga na-interview dyan na residents na umiiyak dahil hindi nakakasingil. Ito, slope protection. Now, how do you intend to address that issue? that
Thank you.
problem?
For that particular project, I can recognize our planning from CAR.
Good morning,
Director for
Honorable Senator. I have inspected the project by myself, and during the survey, under the survey, it was found out that it was solid rock, but during the construction, it was already not solid rock inside. So This time, we are programming slope protections for road projects under the blist area, which we were not able to consider slope protection. But this 2019, sir, we have slope protection programs for all completed roads without the slope protection.
Well, sa mga civil engineers, pag natabunan ng lupa, ng graba, yung kalsada, anong effect noon doon sa concrete? Di ba masisira? Anybody?
Yes, sir, partly. But during construction, if those concrete works were cracked, the contractor is willing to redo and replace.
Well, I think it's also important to note that these circumstances do occur during, it's not the first time that there's been problems that occur during the course of construction, but I think it's important to note that these are not repaired at to the cost of the taxpayer. These are the responsibility of the contractor. Should there be, if there's any damages that done during the construction where the contract is ongoing, these are assumed by the contractor.
No, pero Secretary, Madam Chair, kung hindi magagamit yung kalsada, kasi nga natabunan, taxpayers man yan, hindi ba tayo nanghihinayang sa pera ng bayan? Pera natin lahat yan
If there are, this does not happen on a regular basis. With this particular project, due to the terrain, unfortunately, there was a rock slide, and as much as we try to anticipate everything that can happen during the course of construction, we have to admit that there is room for human error, and if should that happen, these will be corrected by the contractor at the cost of the contractor. But regarding the time, yes, you're correct. We briefly take into the cost of time. Unfortunately, these are, we have to apologize if there's some time delays. We wish we could anticipate every occurrence that might happen during construction, but of course, we do have time delays, and I guess if you were to assume that the time delays are at cost to our, yes, for that we apologize that we cannot anticipate every.
Look, Madam Chair, may call your attention, merong 5 million pesos for slope protection.
That's true, pero kasama sa civil works.
Yeah.
95 yung...
Kung makipansin nyo, Labay, Lacamen, Provincial Road, Section 4A, Blist Outer Ring Circumferential Road, including right-of-way and slope protection. So, funded itong slope protection.
We acknowledge, sir, that we were not able to completely fund for slope protections. But rest assured, sir, na meron po kaming program for slope protection the coming years. Because we have our road slope management now, we have already included all of these slope protections in our proposal.
Which should come first, di ba?
Yes.
Before you construct the roads, ayusin yung ROW, ayusin nyo rin yung slope protection. Otherwise, this is what will happen. Hindi lang ito isang portion, There are
Opo, sir.
several portions of the Blist project na ang daming mga hindi madaanan.
Apo, sir. Ayong
And
mga...
the concreting of roads continues, even as we speak now.
Opo, sir. Tama po.
Madam Chair, I have many questions still, but I'd like to give...
Continue.
No, I want to give our colleagues their chance to ask their questions.
Actually, you have the momentum, and we're learning from you, with the permission of our colleagues, because we have a second hearing anyway, so we will give you the floor.
We will have a second hearing,
Yes.
Madam. I'll ask by other questions, in fairness to our colleagues who are here, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'll defer to
Just
them.
to clarify, because you mentioned my name, that during plenary, you asked me to delete the 50 billion and I put it back in the BICAM. You know, the records here will go down in history. So let me just clarify.
You approved. As a matter of fact, the Senate
Yes.
version, we approved in the Senate version that we deleted 50 billion pesos.
Okay, I just
But it was
clarified.
restored in the BICAM.
Yes, okay. Lest it be misconstrued as Senator Legarda's projects, these are not my projects. And these were explained that these were the projects with right-of-way issues. And then we had small meetings here, I think in this room, with Secretary Villar, Yusek Cabral, and I think Senator Villar was here to help fix that 50 billion ROW issues, challenges, etc., and DPWH requested it to be returned with certain solutions on the row issues. So just to clarify, hindi ko po proyekto yan, hindi ko alam yung detalye niyan. That's a institutional DPWH 50 billion projects with row issues that were eventually, after consultations in open hearing or consultations in this committee room, were returned in BICAM. So it was not like surreptitiously included in BICAM without the knowledge of everyone. Our
Madam-
colleagues and the LBRO were also
Madam
present.
Chair, I never mentioned that these are your projects.
Yes, I know. I just wanted it. You never mentioned. I thank you for that. I just wanted the clarification and the details because I was surprised with that 50 billion. So LBRMO clarified with me that these were the row issues that were returned because the DPWH answered the questions during a subsequent consultation or meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll suspend in the meantime and defer to our colleagues.
Thank you. The order of arrival is Senator Ontiveros and Senator Ejercito. However, may I ask my colleagues, since the Senate President is here, with respect to the position, may we ask the Senate President to have the floor with the permission of Senator Ontiveros and Senator Ejercito? SP, that's okay.
It's okay, Madam Chair. I have decided to listen first and perhaps take up some issues during the next hearing that you will have.
Thank you, Senate President Soto. May we proceed with Senator Ontiveros, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning again, 1 year later, to SecMark. SecMark, does the department follow a national infrastructure plan? Pinakinggan ko naman yung presentation nyo, but do you have anything like a national infra plan similar to or aligned with the Philippine Development Plan of 2017 to 2022? And kung meron po, where are we in terms of progress, or how was the department complied with its performance targets vis-a-vis such a plan? I noted po, for 2017, it seems, pero parang iba naman yung isang opening statement ni Senping. It seems, the first briefing papers I looked at, that the department missed many of its major final outputs by a wide margin, except for flood control. So flood control, there's a 130.58% accomplishment, no? Number of flood control structures constructed or maintained, and yet flooding seems to still be a perennial problem. Tatanong ko rin sana sa inyo, how did we fare during Carding? Kasi parang may naipakitang improvement naman sa response sa flood. Is that because of the more than 100% accomplishment? So, but how does the department fare for the current year, and what adjustments have been made to catch up where margins have been missed on major final outputs? And is this in relation to anything like a national infrastructure plan, Madam Chair?
Answer first question, the national infrastructure. Yes, we are consistent with the, in fact, we were one of the main, we helped, we have coordination with we're one of the drivers for the Philippine Development Plan. As you can see that we mentioned earlier, the major components, which include traffic decongestion, disaster resiliency. And actually, there is really a shift in this department towards master plan projects. In fact, when we came in, we had about a pipeline of worth 50 billion pesos of master plan projects. Now our pipeline is about 800, last check, 800 billion, but we're approaching about $1 trillion worth of high quality feasibility study projects. Now, with regards to the what we had, I'm not sure what numbers we're using, but I think we should. We spoke with the DPM recently that we have to revalidate some numbers because last year we made a shift from manual-based to computer-based monitoring. So during that shift, there's we can't. It's hard to compare a manual-based to a computer-based system because under a computer-based, it's very strict about how you can, like in terms of how many kilometers of road. So I think we just have to rationalize some of the assumptions for, but definitely in terms of if we look at the disbursements which are tied into the physical accomplishment, it's always physical accomplishment is always a function of disbursement. Because of the strict nature of releases in finance. So that that's something that it's one of the metrics that we're very particular with disbursements. As you can see, 2017, our level of disbursements percentage-wise are the same as 2016, despite a higher budget. And 2017, we accomplished a obligation rate of 92%. Now, with the changes that we made this year, which include the computerized system, which include more aggressive planning, we're able to increase that to date. We've already reached 46% to date in terms of disbursement. Now, it's also important to note that in terms of the nature of the DPWH's capital outlay, so we were previously under an obligation-based system. So it's not when under obligation-based, we will do projects that can be put in the budget that are multi-year projects. It will not be finished in 1 year. So if you talk about current year, you cannot compare the current year utilization of the DPWH with other departments because the nature of our budgeting is not single year; it's multi-year. Now that will change next year, in which case then we can start utilizing current rate utilization, disbursement.
Can the Secretary, just for everybody's understanding, since it's the first time we're doing the 12-month cash-based
Yes.
budget, explain to the body what cash-based budgeting would mean? Or the media reports have said that we will have a hybrid. So we'd like to know so that the Senate and the lower house and the executive are working with the same model, because we may be working on the NEP based on cash-based 12 months with a 3-month window for payments, but the House, in your hearings, may be working on a different model, and the executive may be assuming something else.
Yes.
So we just want to make sure we are on the same page.
Yeah.
Thank you, Secretary
Maybe
Mark. Please
if
clarify.
I hope if I can just indulge the committee, I'll give as brief as I can about what this obligation, because I realize it's a little confusing. Where previous to 2017, we were under obligation-based, wherein the department has 2 years to obligate. Prior 2 years to obligate. When we shifted that to a 1-year obligation, meaning that the fund will lapse if you do not obligate it within 1 year. Now, if you obligate it in 1 year, the funds will not lapse. It can be multi-years. You can put a large project, and as long as you obligate it, the funding will still be there. That's why by that point, if you can see, in 2017 there was a jump in obligation because we knew that the obligation would expire on that year. So we really even if the project we really put an emphasis on, and you can see that the obligation rate from 2016 to 2017 jumped from 70 to 92%. And now this year, what's going to happen this next year? Presumably, what we're targeting to happen under a cash basis, it won't be the obligation that will expire in 1 year, meaning it will be the cash, meaning we have to obligate it and disperse the whole fund in 1 year. So therein lies the need for a lower budget, because our assumptions will no longer be obligation-based. When we thought about 2018, we were looking at obligation, what can we obligate in that year? Not looking, whether the project is multi-year, that's not part of our computation. That's not part of our assumption. We can, as long as we obligate it that year. Now, our assumption is we have to obligate it and disperse it in 2019. Now, the proposal is to give a grace period after that 1 year, so that maybe perhaps 3 or 6 months afterwards, it will be the funds will not lapse. It's important to note again in capital outlay. In the case of the DPWH, when we make a cash-based budget, our assumptions have to be lower. That's why, because it's a model based on our disbursements. And the reality is, we don't for a building or for a major project, if you don't disperse everything in 1 year. There's a financial process to go to before you can even release the final budget. Before you can even release. So there's even a financial timetable aside from the actual physical timetable. So anyway, just to cut it short, basically Next year, we have to disperse. So in other words, the budget that we put next year.
Obligation,
Yes.
implementation, disbursement, or payment
Yes.
within 12 months by
Yes.
December.
Yes.
But there is a window of an extension up to March
Yes.
of 2020 and possibly
Possibly longer.
June 30.
Possibly.
That's the hybrid.
Yes, that's the
Pero
hybrid.
para maliwanag lang po ay yung cash-based obligation, ibig sabihin, na bid out.
Yes.
Pangalawa, ini-implement na nung supplier o ng contractor.
Yes.
Pangatlo, babayaran na rin siya dapat hanggang Desyembre 2019.
Yes.
May palugit hanggang March 30. May palugit hanggang June 30 ang pagbayad.
Yes.
So kailangan po ay ma-implement na lahat ng proyektong yan hanggang Desyembre,
Yes.
hindi June 30, 2020,
Tama po.
Desyembre. Kaya
Tama
ang
po.
tanong ko po sa DPWH, first time magaganap ito, kaya ba ho ninyo i-implement ang cash-based budgeting na hindi lang obligation? Ngayon, maganda, may obligation kayo na 80%, no? Is it 80%? Sabi
Which
ni
one?
Nanay, 90.
To date.
Ah.
To this year to date.
Yes,
As of
to
July
date.
31,
Okay,
it's
iba
80%.
yun.
Yeah.
So, pero pagtanungin ko kayo, obligation nyo mataas, pero ang inyong implementation at disbursement hanggang July 30, I am sure, could you have the figures? So, we will see, itong taon na ito, obligation nyo mataas, 80%, ano ang inyong project implementation to date? Ano ang inyong
to date,
payments
ma'am,
to date or
to
disbursement?
date, ma'am,
Yes.
as of July 31, our disbursement is 46%.
Okay, kalahati 46.
But year on year, it's important to put it in the proper context. Year on year, at this point this year, the percentage was 34%. So year on year, we're ahead 12% of where we were last year. So in other words, with the higher budget, we're still ahead. And it's important to note also that in the construction timeline, the first, it's like an S curve. the majority of after a certain point, nag-ramp up. So we're seeing a ramp up also in the construction activity. So, well, anyway, year on year, basically,
30%.
we're ahead 312 billion versus 191 at the same point last year. That's where we
So
are
this
at now.
year, you're higher than the year-on-year average of 30+%.
20 last year, yeah.
You're on 40 plus, 46%
46.
disbursement as of July 31
Yeah.
for 2018.
Yes, well, last year, at the same time this year, in 2017,
It was
we
30.
were at 34%.
34, okay, clear. So for the next year, based on the cash-based budget, you'll have to, uulitin ko lang, obligate, i-bid out po nyo. Pangalawa, implement ng suppliers, contractors, etc. At mabayaran ng Desyembre 2019. Pero may window, ayon sa NEP, ng Marso 2020 na ang tingin ko sa House, sa pag-uusap, hanggang June 30. Payment lang yan, yung window na 6 months. But obligation implementation should be December
Yes.
2019. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Paano po yung mga na-obligate, hindi natapos ng supplier, contractor, implementer, ng December, natapos sila ng March? Paano yung bayad, babalik po sa Treasury kung hindi natapos ang proyekto?
If
Let's say
anything,
2/3 ng bridge ang natapos. Matatapos nila, for some reason, may row issue, March of 2020. What will happen to the funds? It will be returned to Treasury. How will you pay the implementer, contractor, supplier?
yes, there is a special purpose. I'll just add two things. One, for multiple year for projects like that, we're not saying there's no other projects. There is a multi-year obligation authority where we can a large project can be bid out in its totality, but the funding is on a year-to-year basis. But it's still, so it's the same concept as what we're doing. Basically, we can still do long-term projects, but we have to apply a special vehicle for it called a MAYOA. So we can still, but the funds won't reflect. But to answer your question, Senator, for that year, there is a standby fund that the transition fund that DBM has prepared. So that if there are any projects that, like, let's say in that case, similar, where it's a gray area where it's a little, konti lang, hindi natapos, or parang konti na lang na, for a valid reason, they have a standby fund, it's for 2020, that would allow up to 2020 to allow them to, still, pay the commitment to the...
The standby fund is lodged under your budget?
No, it's under the DBM.
Pa-check natin yung standby fund kung magkano, ha? Ay, hindi. Oo, check natin. Magkano yung standby fund? Wala eh. Wala.
Of course, it's under 2020 because 2019, it won't be, because obviously
Walang
yeah.
standby fund.
No, there's no need because 2019, yeah. There's no need because 2019 will be still be
Yes,
implemented.
so it will be for
it's
the NEP of
2020,
2020. Okay. So yung Mayowa, clear yon. Pero yung stand-alone na infra projects, magkakaroon ng transition standby fund in the NEP of 2020 for those that, for valid reasons, were not completed because it's not a multi-year project, but were completed within the next quarter of the next year, but the funds of 2019 will divert back to Treasury. Okay, clear. Sorry to interrupt. Senator Ontiveros, proceed, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Sec Mark, pwede nyo bang bigyan ng kopya yung komite itong National Infrastructure Plan nyo, or what do you call
Yes,
it? The
Madam.
plan that covers the master plan projects
Yes, yes.
na binanggit nyo kanina.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. And clarify ko lang yung napansin ko kanina na parang iba yung isang element nung isang opening remark ni Sen Ping kanina, and then yung naobserbahan ko in my own briefing papers, yung sinite kasi ko was appropriations, so up to, sabi nyo nga, 48%. Yung sinasite ko yung actual accomplishments, where pinakamataas yung number of flood control structures constructed or maintained at 130.58%, pero yung iba, whether length of national roads maintained, constructed, paved, length of bridges constructed, length of access roads leading to airports, seaports, or tourist destinations constructed would range from 2.02% to 30.12%. Kaya that was behind Sec. Mark.
Yeah, I think that I think you got that from the DBM numbers. Our appeal to the DBM is because of the information came from us. The year prior to that, we were at manual. So in other words, what they were accounting for was under the manual system, it's basically account. But with the computer system, you can only recognize it upon completion of the project. So it's not apples to apples. Under the PCMA system, it's very strict with regards to the project. So that's the only thing it recognizes. Well, at the previous year, it's basically how it's constructed. Like physically, we use the manual, basically as Excel system. So they would tell us, okay, this much. But under the PCMA, if you generate a report from the PCMA, it's a different, the nature, it will only recognize a project. So it could be, when even financial completion. So that's why we're readjusting the numbers, because obviously if you look at the numbers, it's far. But the reason for that is because of the computerization, and we will in the next year we will be able to rationalize it. It's a big transition for us right now. There's a lot of, of course, in any movement to computerization, there's always some monitoring and some issues with regards to the statistics that might be. But rest assured, we're working on that this year to give the people a true accounting of what is the actual accomplishments. Because obviously, what is under the computer is different than what is happening on the ground. But that's why we'll give you a more comprehensive report, ma'am. And by this week, I've already spoken to our department to come up with a more accurate reporting. Of course, very accurate is based by the PCMA. But of course, we have to tell the people what has been constructed, and not just what is financially under the financial timetable or under the parameters of the PCMA. So that's something we're working on. So I apologize for any confusion.
It's all right, and thank you for the clarification. So, and aside from shifting from manual-based to computer-based and explaining it to us and to your other publics, how does the what adjustments are being made to catch up, or are they already incorporated in your presentation earlier?
Well, I think with this new, there's certain there's certain controls that we have to abide by. It's very detailed. Without going into too much detail, basically, if I can just give you a quick briefer on this this PCMA system. It was done with assistance from the World Bank. So it's a new software that we're utilizing that it's basically project monitoring, whereas before we relied primarily on Excel spreadsheet reports without analytics. Now this time we utilize analytics, we can derive we can easily trace in terms of get information in terms of blacklisting, who are the top contractors, who has the highest slippages, what areas, and that's what we're utilizing now only this year. So I mean it's a transition period, but what's nice about the software is in terms of transparency, we'll be able to monitor projects via geotagging. So meaning at any time we have access to any project, even the releases of the project will be vetted via satellite-based picture taking. It's not anymore yung manual picture taking. Baka pwede pang, there's no support for that. But if you have a satellite-based, you can be sure. In fact, we have a InfoTrack application that is satellite monitored. There it will give you the exact location of where the picture was taken. So wala nang daya. We're not saying, but there will be no room for error in that respect. Aside from that, also we'll be utilizing video droning technology to monitor the project, so that when we come here to the Senate, we have a real-time picture of all the projects. So if there's any concerns, we'll be able to address them even faster. So that's basically the broad strokes of the computer software that we just implemented it this year. And there are still some bugs, and we are correcting them. But long term, I think this will be a big help in terms of transparency.
Madam Chair, with the permission of Senator Risa, very quick
Yes, sir.
interjection. Can you make it public? Can you allow public to have access? Just to monitor.
Yes, actually, we have a website, especially for the pictures. We'd like people to. We're working on that now in terms of the project monitoring. That's something that we want. We want to post it online, all the geotag photos of all the pictures, so that anytime, whether it's Sariaya or any road, they'll know where, as of to this date. I just have to apologize that this is a transition year, so it hasn't been fully. But that's where we're going. That's
I
where we're
understand
going.
right now only regional directors have access.
For certain aspects of the project monitoring, but I think we have to we're trying to fix it so that there are different levels of access. I think public can have access to the pictures, a certain as much as we can. We want it to be transparent, but of course there are limitations also, and that's what we're trying to determine at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, something that would be, and I'm glad that SecMark agrees with you, that would be a really good idea para mas ma-popularize din yung ginagawa ng iba't ibang civil society organizations like, say, Concerned Citizens of Abra for Good Government, CCAGG, since way back in the 1980s, kung saan talagang super manual ang pag-monitor nila. So now, if they could participate also in this computer-based monitoring system, that would be good too. Thank you, Madam Chair. SecMark, what role do the regional development councils play in the determination of priority projects? And what sort of mechanisms are in place to provide feedback, say, on which projects endorsed by RDCs have been included, vis-a-vis, for example, those endorsed by legislators? Kasi alam natin sa mga RDCs, andito yung mga local government officials natin closest to the ground, and they also make inputs towards DPWH's yearly plans.
The regional development, to begin with, it's another requirement, and we require that. That's one of the, especially for our convergence programs, that's one of the requirements before we can, before we put it in our NEP.
Ano yung percentage po or timbang nung RDC recommended, NEDA approved projects vis-a-vis, for example, yung mga nire-recommenda kahit sa loob ng menu ng department ng mga legislators? To which do you give greater weight at nakikita ba ito ng mga local government officials natin?
Yes, it's given weight. It's actually a requirement, so it's given a lot of weight, and that's one of the major components for any major project. Yeah, in fact, many projects have been denied for convergence because they lack the RDC approval.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll follow that up at a future date. And along this line, still sa mga RDCs, SecMark, what role does the department's planning office have in determining which priority projects will be included, for example, in the submission of the department to DBM for inclusion in the NEP? While I understand that it's the mandate of the DPWH to fund national projects, it's not precluded from providing funds for local projects. Kaya sa NEP, yung local programs may allocation ng 119B for, among others, local roads at 33B, multipurpose facilities at 26B, local bridges at 4B. So curious po ako as to what criteria are used to determine which projects to include in the NEP. At alin naman, for example, ay endorso o i-refer sa ibang departments, halimbawa sa DILG, dahil mga local projects din ito.
That's why we try as much as we can to institutionalize. That's why we have these, what we call convergence. That is actually the reason why we created the convergence, is because we want there to be accountability and support for all the projects. So if you look at it, that's why we expanded. Now that, people want to request road leading to factories because they say they need it. That's why we created the DTI. We get requests from also people who want to build military facilities. That's a new one. That's why we created the TICAS, because we want to ensure that the funding that we're using is really the purpose is clear. With regards to the there's always a basis for, or there should always be a basis for every project. Now, some of them are come from our regional directors, our district engineering offices. That's the basis which we vet and which we require for projects, especially convergence. So required the RDC and other, even the approval from the local. So, of course, ultimately, we're not the body that creates the budget. We recommend the budget, but we leave it to the Senate and the Congress to create the budget. But that's why we create these programs, to make sure that the funds that are being used have accountability and have transparency.
Tapos sa huli, paano nyo didenisisyonan na kung alin ang local projects na kukunin nyo sa DP, alin naman ang i-refer halimbawa sa DILG?
Well, in general, let's say Department of Agriculture, they have their farm to market. We don't want any repetition of these things. So if, let's say, someone has a request for a farm to market road, it's automatic that we refer it to the Department of Agriculture. School buildings, it's automatic that we refer it to the Department of Education. And DILG, if it's we recommend local roads and bridges to DILG. That is our procedure. Now, of course, in the end, we're not the budget-making body, so there are certain. We leave it to the wisdom of Congress for that. But as far as we're concerned, that's how we deal with these projects that are requested from us.
So one basic criterion is simple non-duplication of functions across departments.
Yes, that's definitely one of the major.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll follow that up at a future.
Before you
point. Yes,
proceed,
Madam
may I recognize Senator Mig Subrir, Majority Leader, present here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. SecMark, could the department briefly tell us more about the engineering and administrative overhead, where payments for salaries of job order personnel are charged against? So under fiscal year 2019 NEP, the DPWH is authorized to deduct a percentage from projects for project-related expenses. For infra projects costing more than 1 million pesos, the department is authorized to deduct but not to exceed the following percentages of the project civil works cost to be used for these EAO expenses or MOOE. So, 3.5% for releases to the central office, 2.5% for releases to the regional offices, 2% for releases to the DE offices, 1% for infra projects under the local infrastructure program undertaken by the central office, ROs or DEOs, and 0.5% for infra projects of other agencies undertaken by the same offices. Could the department provide the committee a utilization report of these amounts collected from these deductions? Bagamat maliliit po yung mga porsyento, I feel since it's at the core of the department's function to supervise infra projects, I'd like to see, and I think the committee would like to see how much goes to supervision and how much to payment of salary for these JO personnel?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, we will furnish you. We have provisions, and these are followed. And well, you already stated some of them, but I won't restate them. But we will give you a report on the EL.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nabanggit din po kanina yung mga FS. So a total of about 7B is allotted to cover feasibility and pre-feasibility studies, preliminary and detailed engineering. Could the department inform the committee where this amount will go and for which project?
Yes, there's a supporting list for that, and we can furnish you with a list, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ito, kaugnay nung budget reform bill na sinosponsor ni Madam Chair. May we know what the department is doing to comply with the COA audit report, specifically on low disbursement rate, delayed projects, and excessive rental of motor vehicles, and excessive project cost? I remember po in the beginning discussions on the budget reform bill, usapin po doon yung excessive cost, over time in the implementation of projects, pati itong usapin ng slippage, which is something I also noted when I was preparing for this hearing, that COA 2017 noted the delayed completion and non-implementation of projects, noting among others a negative slippage of 15% incurred, yet no liquidated damages were imposed on the contractors. And usually, and in your own Department Order 37, Series 2015, regarding slippage, a delay exceeding 20% would already merit the imposition of a penalty. So ano pong ginagawa ng department para mag-comply sa COA audit report, and maybe your thoughts on how these relate to the budget reform bill?
Yes, with regard to the report, actually those were COA findings. But afterwards, we had, like any findings, well, no adverse findings, but like any findings, we had a post-meeting, post-audit meeting with the COA to explain, to be fair to them, to explain to the side of the DPWH. And what was released in the media was the initial findings. But upon explanation, it was clear. We made it clear to them. For instance, you mentioned this disbursement rate of the disbursement rate that was identified by the COA was the current year disbursement rate. Now that includes, that was about, I think they said 30-something%. I mentioned this earlier. When you say current year, that is a 5-year budget. What was dispersed, not the total disbursements. The total disbursements of the department that year was 400 billion. The disbursements of the DPWH consist of current year and previous years. That's the nature of capital outlay, because not all projects under the obligation-based system are designed to be finished in 1 year. So obviously there are projects in 2017 that were not designed to be finished in 2017. So hindi talaga mag 100% yan. There will never be a time na 100% current year, and that's what we explained to the COA. I'm not saying that there's no room for improvement. Of course, that's why this year we made an effort really to improve the budgetization. But I think it would maybe perhaps we want to manage expectations of the people that under an obligation base, you really can't expect that projects will be 100% finished in 1 year, because that's not the nature of our budgeting. It's only obligation based, and in that respect, we hit 92%. So I think it's important, and we explained this to the COA that, in fairness to them, I think it was maayos naman nung usapan, and I think that was clear to everyone that under a capital outlay, we cannot be treated the same as other departments, because our projects are really not 1 year projects. It's never. It would be unfair to us to judge us by a 100% with a target of 100% 1 year obligation, when none of our projects, or not none, but many of our projects are with a multi-year timeline. So it really won't be. But that being said, in terms of disbursements, we've already hit this year we're beyond our disbursement targets, which I think it's a good sign that we're ready for the eventual cash payment obligation. Like we mentioned earlier, the latest numbers that we have is we're at 46%, 12% year high and higher. In absolute terms, that's 316 billion as opposed to 192 2 billion at the same time at this point this year. So I just want to make that clear that in terms of our targets, we're ahead. Can we improve? Yes, we are continuously improving. It's not perfect. Our obligation last year was the same level as the year before, except with a higher budget. So it did not go down. It maintained, and this year there was a sharp spike. And the second question with regards to the slippages, that is one of precisely why we want this monitoring system. Under RA 9184, we at 15%, at 15%, which is the critical ICU stage of any project, the procedures under the law are to give them, they have to come up with a catch-up plan, which we approve. And what's upon their catch-up plan, that's how we allow them to reduce their slippage factor. So sometimes, if it might be that it reaches 10 or 15%, and at that point, what is provided for under the law is that we require them to come up with an action plan, and we can deduct liquidated damages. Now, that's why it's important for us. Of course, initially, we always try to finish the project. Even if there's slippages, we give them the opportunity. We always want them to finish the project first, because obviously, if they can do it in a faster time, then that's more beneficial to us instead of going through the whole process of cancellation and rebidding. Now, I admit that in terms of monitoring, we need to be more vigilant. That's why we implemented this software, so that at least now, and what is the effect of this? Just recently, we wrote 43 major contractors for explanations as to their slippage factors based on the PCMA report. This is, I think, we've already started blacklisting proceedings against some, and I think it's starting to bear fruit. I think in the upcoming months, as the system starts to really reach its full potential, I think we'll see even improved monitoring. But initially, that's one of the big, I think, accomplishments under the PCMA is that immediately we're able to generate a list of contractors with 15%. Well, before we have to collate information from all the regions, they have to send it via Excel manual. It's a very tedious process. Now it's just a click of the button, and that became the basis for us writing to 43 contractors, many of which are are large contractors. So I think we'll see. I'm confident that we'll see improvement, and that those are the actions taken regarding the slippages.
Are similar actions undertaken regarding the other COA audit report finding on excessive project costs? And do you have any thoughts about how these relate to the budget reform bill?
Yes, with regards to project costs, I think, again, discretion is, we want to eliminate discretion. We want to come up with a more efficient monitoring system. A lot of these problems, we're keeping in mind that we manage 44,000 projects nationwide, and I'm not saying that there's the percentage of projects that there are problems that arise. I'll never pretend that there won't be any problems. I'm sure there will be problems that arise, and I think that's why it's important that we have these monitoring tools that will help us. Because the reality is, it's very difficult. Our ratio of project engineers to project is not acceptable to me at this stage, which is why we requested from the DBM an additional almost 4,000 project engineers to be included. That is in order to achieve an ideal ratio, which is about 5:1. So these are the steps that were taken. And Madam Chairwoman, I realize that there are, at this point, out of 44,000 projects, there's really a small percentage of projects that I admit will have implementation problems. But I think that we can see significant improvements. Yeah, and we have the ability now to detect immediately and to act swiftly on these concerns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One follow-up question dun sa nauna yung discussion kay Chair about the shift from obligation-based to cash-based budgeting. There's been a significant decrease in your budget proposal if the basis is this year's obligation-based budget. However, kung yung basis yung cash equivalent ng current year budget, which DBM computed at 441B, your cash-based budget of 555B for 2019 is actually higher by mga 25.8% or 113B. So what are your thoughts on this? Is DPWH one of those departments who may be better off with a cash-based budget, given the previous low disbursement or obligation rates for some projects?
We are not, of course, we support the cash-based, and I think that that's a shift. I mean, I think there has to be perhaps educate more awareness regarding this, because we're not reducing the budget. Actually, we're increasing the budget, where what we are doing is rationalizing what we can spend in 1 year. So what I mentioned earlier, if there's a big project, then we utilize a MAYOA. In a way, what the challenge for, not in a way, the challenge for us is in planning. We have to be able to, whereas before, you simply put the project and the amount, regardless of how many years. You just want, all you have to do is you obligate it, and then that's your, but now, under the cash base, it instills discipline, because you know that in 1.5 or 2 years, those funds will expire. So on our part, I think that's, for me, that's that is a good, I mean, I would think that it's a good reform that would instill discipline. Is it more work for us? Yes, but well, if it's better, if it's the benefit of the people, then we'll support that. And I think that will be the benefit of the cash-based.
Thank you, Sec Mark. I might follow that up a little later. One follow-up question also dun sa diskusyon nyo naman ni Sen Ping about the right-of-way acquisition budgets. In those budgets, what are the allowable cost items as provided for in 10752, otherwise known as the Right-of-Way Act of 2016? Kasama ba ang mga sumusunod? Compensation for landowners, for structures, for utilities along the right-of-way, NHA concessional loan for house and lot, yung disturbance cost or disturbance compensation, or is there any equivalent for a few months of minimum wage? And then idugtong ko na po, what about livelihood restoration?
Well, livelihood restoration, that that's not really part of the nature of right-of-way. But the other things that you mentioned, such as compensation, what we call, ano yun, yung pag-ISF, the relocation, the ISF. There's something for ISF, we can pay them like financial assistance. That's part of the right-of-way. Disturbance cost. There's a provision for that in terms of, even in terms of, under the new right-of-way law, in terms of structures, they can be compensated for the structure improvements. That's part of it. We have a new implementing rules and regulations for utilities. So that's just recently where we create, there's already a formula for the cost of relocation of utility poles. So most of the ones that you mentioned, ma'am, are included in the right-of-way costs.
Sec, binanggit nyo nga kanina in your presentation about disturbance compensation, complaints from informal sector families or ISFs, na sabi nyo nga not necessarily anticipated at the start of the project. Pero kaugnay nga ito ng livelihood restoration. Yusek Mir of the PMO for ODAs knows of this. There are income restoration budgets and standards in the World Bank funded Metro Manila Flood Management Project. Can you tell us what the standards and costs are? And why don't we have the same provision for non-ODA projects? Halimbawa, kahit sa lahat ng ating mga PPP, as mga build, BBB, is there a way to refine the IRRs of RA 10752 para yung income restoration na katulad nung sa World Bank ADB standards maging eligible expense item din? And if so, would the department be willing to help us draft the special provisions to be included in the 2019 GAA?
Well, Madam Chairwoman, definitely we'd like to help you draft something like that. I think that's a very noble idea. Of course, maybe you can, Undersecretary Sadain is in charge of our foreign fund. He can give you an idea of what is allowed under the provisions of foreign funded projects.
Madam Chair, Your Honors, on the ODA funded projects, it has been a very strict policy from ODA institutions on the safeguard measures as to addressing all social issues, no? Not only on the perspective of the right-of-way acquisition, but also on the informal settlers, particularly ISF. So in the stage of the feasibility studies of all ODA funded projects, it is always a top priority among other measures that needs to be addressed. Meaning even it has been with the provinces, locations, the right-of-way acquisitions and the ICF will not actually be disintegrated. There's always the land acquisition and relocation action plan that needs to be addressed during the FSC stage, because the acquisition here will take some time, being that most of the ODA are actually long-term process of implementation. So prior to the detailed design comes in, the land acquisition and relocation action plan during the FSC stage should have been in place already. So meaning as the detailed design comes in, that goes from 1 to 1.5 years of detailed design with due diligence, the right-of-way acquisitions taken from the FS will roll down as to right-of-way acquisitions both for the formal and informal settlers. So in time for the procurement for the civil works contract, almost 70 to 80% right-of-way acquisitions already been acquired or secured. So that goes also, Madam Chair, on the addressing on the ISF. Importante po talaga siya.
And I'd like to add, Madam Chairwoman, also that we have a arrangement with NHA wherein our informal settlers will be allowed to receive housing, and that's part of our right-of-way. In fact, in anticipation of our flagship projects for next year, we've already spoken to them, and we've identified as many as 7,000 houses already ready for occupancy once we've for next year, once we've identified and we've started relocating in preparation for the flagship projects of Build.
Pero Yusek Sedain and Secmark, yun ngang mga safeguard measures sa ODA projects, hindi ba pwedeng i-adopt din kahit sa non-ODA projects? Kasi malaking bahagi din naman ng Build ay non-ODA din.
Well, it's not. That's a good idea. We can, if you ask me why not, yeah, we can. Yeah, maybe certain things
Can I
like
make a comment on that from our experience in the local government? I think you give money for them to relocate to national housing. In my experience, you give money to those who are relocating to a national housing project. I think in ours, the Public Works gave something like 18,000 per household, and they were given a house na they only pay 200 pesos amortization to own a house, and they were very happy. And I think the NHA has what you call a department on, they call it department on livelihood, that they help those living in the relocation areas of the NHA to have livelihood. I think it's beyond the work of the Department of Public Works. It's being taken over by the National Housing Authority. So maybe we can ask the National Housing Authority what are they doing to make sure that the ones relocated to their housing projects are given a good life. Okay.
Will do, Madam Chair, and salamat sa paalala about the livelihood funds of the NHA. Pero yung sinabi ni Secmark na it's a good idea, yung safeguard measures kahit sa non-ODA projects, I'll take that ball and run with it. If that's as good as it gets right now, babalikan ko na lang si Madam Chair kung pwede ngang magtulungan tayo sa pag-draft ng ganong klaseng special provision. Second to the last question, Madam Chair, Sec, binanggit nyo na rin naman kanina yung Marawi in your presentations about the road network development project in conflict-affected areas in Mindanao, saka yung reconstruction and development plan for a greater Marawi. Could you give us even if brief update on the Marawi rehab, at least for that component that the department is supposed to implement or supervise? How much is allocated?
Yes.
Who will undertake the rehab, local or foreign contractors? And when will it actually commence?
yes, actually we'll be starting construction at the fourth quarter of this year. We'll already be starting groundbreaking construction, and To give you some specifics, I'd like to recognize Yusek Sadayan also, who's in charge of this is a foreign funded project, and the feasibility study was done by JICA. So to give you some more details, I'd like to recognize Yusek Undersecretary Sadayan.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair, Your Honors. The rehabilitation package for Marawi actually, on the context of financing, there are actually funds from local budget that is actually being addressed into consolidating by the task force chaired by Chairman Del Rosario. Then on the ODA component, where DPWH has also proposed some assistance to immediately implement those projects, we were able to secure grant assistance from JICA, about 950 million pesos. And most of this amount actually is lodged on the rehabilitations of the trans-central roads, which are actually basically the small roads within the 72 barangays of Marawi City outside of the 24 ground zero, because basically Marawi City constitutes of 96 barangays. Yung 24 barangays, this is being addressed by the task force. They call it the most affected areas, which is actually the core works being done by the HADC on the unsolicited proposal. But for the 72 barangays, where most of the trans-central roads are now for constructions, will commence actually this October. So we are actually on the procurement stage of these projects. So as mentioned by Honorable Secretary, that the ring road also constitute part of that funds to actually provide close accessibility to the areas, both in and out of Marawi City. So there's a lot of undertaking, ma'am, here for Marawi rehabilitations. ADB also comes in under the emergency assistance loan, but this is still being reviewed by the ADB along with our technical staff and with DPWH.
Just want to manifest that if there are problems during relocation, the local government, they give money also. No, here in Metro Manila, there are many local governments who give money also in addition to what the DPWH is helping them. Like us, we give money. If the DPWH cannot give, we give our own money so that they will be relocated well. I think many people are helping, and I think it's not unfair to those who are being relocated. They are very happy because, you know, if you see their houses in Metro Manila and compare them with the houses they have with the NHA, I think kung i-compare ko yan, mukhang palasyo yung bahay nila sa NHA kaysa yung giniba namin bahay dito sa Metro Manila. Because the houses we tear down in Metro Manila, puro tarpaulin yun eh. Akala ko nga basura, yung pala yun ang mga bahay nila, puro tarpaulin. And they get very nice houses from NHA. I mean, it's not comparable. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And salamat.
I just recognize Senator Joel Villanueva. Senator Migsubiri, I recognize. Proceed, please.
Salamat, Madam Chair. And salamat kay Yusek Sadain. The Senate will continue to monitor and support yung Marawi Rehab, lalo na po through the special committee that we created for that, both sa Greater Marawi at saka dun sa most affected area. Kasi may magkakaibang overlapping pero magkakaibang dynamics din po. Last question, Madam Chair, nabanggit nyo, Sec Mark, yung sa Binondo Intramuros Bridge na Chinese government grant. So, syempre, yung isang area of abiding interest yung mga Chinese projects dito sa ating build. So are there any initial observations that the Secretary, the Department would like to share with the committee as far as the magnitude at saka yung aside from numerical significance ng Chinese projects na ito sa DPWH programs and policies?
Well, I think at this stage, it would be, at this early stage of our relations with China, it might be premature to come up with any conclusions But that being said, I think they've been very helpful in the sense that we're very thankful that these two bridges were given to us via a grant that's $100 million. So I have only thanks for we have only thanks for the Chinese government for doing that, which has no strings attached. And in fact, even Marawi, they were one of the first to donate equipment to for the rehabilitation, construction equipment worth about 187 million pesos worth of various heavy equipment. So it's also important to note that, of course, I hear a lot of things about these the concerns regarding China, but I think we're at a very early stage. In fact, so far these projects are feasibility studies. They're going to finance some of our projects, but of course, the process, we still have to go through a very rigorous process. We have to negotiate for the interest rates if they're favorable. Obviously, if it's not acceptable to us or it's not that competitive, well, obviously we might look at other sources. But definitely, China has been very helpful in giving us funds for feasibility studies, actual projects, and even in terms of equipment. So it would be too premature to say if there's any problems, but we're beginning this relationship at this point, and so far it's been bearing fruit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fair enough, pero syempre alam naman nating lahat na gaya na nga ni sinabi niyo, Sec Mark, na you've been hearing of these concerns dito rin sa Senado. Interesado yung Economic Affairs Committee namin to look into the terms of loans vis-a-vis, for example, interest rates offered by other international lending partners. And syempre, yung pagpihit naman ng gobyerno natin towards China, it's not unilateral. Alam naman natin na may very ambitious, admirable, ambitious, but giving rise to some concerns na mga plano ang China sa region and all over the world through its Belt and Road Initiative, etc. So it's a very interesting development for us. And for one, as a legislator, I think the DPWH will be an important place to draw the line, our own line, how we want this most important regional partner and one of the important global partners na sumunod din sa batas natin. And of course, it's not up to them, it's up to us. So we'll also be counting on the department to help us do that. Salamat kina Sec Mark and salamat Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ontiveros. We proceed with Senator J.V. Ejercito, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to ask, I'd just like to raise some points from an observation from a driver and a rider. We're lucky that our Senate President here drives himself, because when you drive yourself, you can observe a lot of things. So I'd just like to bring some to the attention of our Secretary.
You drive your own vehicle, but I see you driving a motorcycle up to
Sometimes.
Apayao. You better be safe. And before you ask that, since he's a driver himself, may we ask the safety insofar, not just vehicles, but motorcycles? Because so many accidents and deaths have been due to that. So we want Senator JV to survive his re-election, right?
Definitely. We will do everything in our power to.
But perhaps a more technical answer from the Secretary, apart from your power. Yes, and how safe are roads for motorcycle riders, for example? No, I'm serious.
Well, yeah, of course, in terms of national roads, it's something that the maintenance. In fact, we have a computer software that monitors the age of our roads. So sometimes, we like to beg the indulgence also of the motorists, because sometimes it's not always physically apparent by the eye that the road is not up to standard. Sometimes you don't immediately see it, but there are cases where it needs to be. Yeah, when it goes to a road safety audit, if it doesn't pass, then we are obliged to upgrade it. But anyway.
Before he asks his questions, because my concern really is the safety of those who ride motorcycles. Not everybody can afford a car or a vehicle. Yung iba, nagmamotor, ang dami kong staff nagmamotor, at 2 o 3 na ay na-aksidente, na muntik na mamatay pati anak. So, ano ba ho, educate me, ang mga pamamaraan sa ating departamento nyo para to assure, mahirap pag English ko na, how do we assure the safety of our roads insofar not just of vehicles, but also road safety for motorcycle riders? What kind of roads, should there be an allocated space? What do other countries do? What are we doing here to ensure its safety?
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
the road safety is really it's a general concept. In other words, we don't. Yeah, I think for motorcycles, I think there has to be, in terms of how we view motorcycles, it has to be viewed like a car, where you don't swerve in between lanes. You have to be. Yeah, there's some. I think. I mean, whether or not this is not out in my. This is not part of DPWH's mandate, but in my personal opinion, in other countries, what I know is you consider a motorcycle like a car, where it has a space that's similar to a car, and you consider if you signal left, right. I guess I see sometimes there's a lot of swerving in between the, which technically in any stand dapat hindi ganyan dapat ano lang you have your space and you respect that, and your treatment of a motorcycle should be that similar to how you treat a car. And that's why even us, when we talk about safety, our assumption is, any motorized vehicle, whether it be a motorcycle or a truck or everything, that goes into how we design. If it's we obviously, whether the thickness, whether it's 30 centimeters, the standards, the width. That's why we chose 3.25 barangay. Yeah, sometimes like if it's a local road, we see 2 meters, 2.5. Our standard is really based on safety for all vehicles.
Is there a motorcycle line? Can you please educate me?
There's no
Is
motorcycle.
it necessary to have a motorcycle line? Because according to Senator Ejercito, there are LGUs with a motorcycle line. I know a bike lane, I know pedestrian lanes, but a motorcycle lane, I'm not familiar. Which jurisdiction or city has it? And in other countries that have a lot of motorcycles, how do they do it? May I be
I
educated?
think there's no motorcycle line that I know of that it's not part of our. There's a bicycle lane. There's no motorcycle. There's a bicycle, because I think most countries, they don't have a motorcycle because the assumption is it's a car. It's a car. You take up the same space as a car. You should theoretically act as if you're in a car. Everything that you do should be that assumption. But unfortunately, sometimes we can see in actuality, sometimes hindi. Parang hindi kotse, parang singit lang singit.
Most of the time, that's sometimes.
Most of the
Yes.
time.
So
But
I understand now where you're coming from, that motorcycle riders and drivers of others should respect and treat a motorcycle like a car.
Yes.
Even if it's smaller
Yes.
and different ang itsura.
Because if you do
May
not-
we request DPWH to work with the LTFRB and the LTO and other departments of government, and LTO, LTFRB, para yung buses at saka yung mga vehicles, to have a protocol for respect for motorcycles. Kasi, sa totoo lang, hindi ganyan ang paningin at trato. Dahil maliit. Wala maliit yan. Pag malaki kang cement mixer o truck o bus, malaki ka, hindi ka mamamatay. Pero motorsiklo, maaring mabundol. I'm not saying, hindi ko po lahat, baka naka-Facebook live, tayo pa kami misunderstand. Sometimes, we treat life as if it was so cheap, na pag tayo ay malaki, sa sideswipe, at saka cross ng kalsada, ganun. Kaya ang daming na-aksidente, hindi dahil lamang sa uri ng kalsada, kundi na rin walang protocol, walang etika, walang sinusundan na patakaran. So ang hinihiling ko po sa DPWH, sa mga ahensya ng gobyerno na dalawang binanggit ko, kung damihan pa ninyo, magkaroon ng maliwanag na protocol na kasunduan na isusumiti po nyo sa komite na by that second meeting, nakapirma na po yung dalawang ahensyang yon. They cannot say no to you. That's for safety, road safety.
yes, Madam Chairwoman, that's a very good suggestion, and we will work on that.
Yes,
because,
thank you. Second po, kasi may inaanak na ako namatay sa motorcycle, ang dami. Anyway, second, sorry, before you, that's for your own safety, kasi I see you motoring to all over Mindanao and up to the Cordillera. It's not, now, what will it take for our roads, national, provincial, local roads, to have bike lanes, pedestrian lanes? I advocate for the commons. Car owners, riders who can afford, don't own the streets. It's for the commons, it's for people. So we should really allocate when applicable. In fact, all sana, may bike lane. At dapat din, the protocol also of motorized vehicles, including motorcycles naman, ang protocol naman sa nagbibisikleta. Because if we encourage bike lanes, if we build bike lanes, we'll encourage bikers, and our DNR will be forced to have the Clean Air Act implemented, and the LGUs also will force to implement the Clean Air Act. So how many of our streets from this total budget actually have bike lanes? How can we innovate in the 2019? I'm willing to amend it so that we will build with bike lanes where safe and where applicable, and pedestrian lanes. Secretary.
Yes, I am your, I'm a believer of advocacy, and this department is your ally with that. I'd like to, maybe percentage-wise, out of the total budget, admittedly, at this point, there's very few roads existing that have a built-in bike lane. In fact, just now we built our first, probably the first major highway in Metro Manila with a built-in bike lane, which is Laguna Lake Highway. That maybe you know it as C6 before, which was previously a two-lane asphalt road that we are opening in the last quarter of this year into a 10-kilometer road with a built-in bike lane. So this is a bike lane that's separated completely from the vehicular traffic. And another project is the Bacolod Economic Highway, which also we want to build in a bike lane. So what applicable, if we have the right of way, we would like to do that, and we have the space, we would like to do that. If we get budgetary support for doing that, definitely it's something that I would really push for. I will help push that for you.
Secretary, before the next hearing, I have the unanimous support of the Senate to amend your road projects for 2019 to include bike lanes, not just Laguna Lake. I think this will really, it's a legacy on your part, on our part. It will revolutionize lifestyle in the Philippines. It will compel national and local government to implement the Clean Air Act, and it will boost local tourism. So it will decongest the streets from those na nagkukotse, and the police will be forced to make our streets safer. Iilawan, may bantay ng mga pulis, ang langhap ng hangin, dapat mas malinis, mapapressure DNR, ang local government, pati ang basura, nahihiya sila dahil may nagbibisikleta, at yung mga hindi kayang magpampublikong naka-aircon o may sasakyan ay magbibisikleta. Believe me, it's gonna change the way we do things. So, I requested my colleagues to support me in this, not just Laguna Lake. Please allocate it. If you have to amend a little your programs to include that. Actually, in this year's, 2000, pero 18, ginawa ko na yun eh. Actually, in the past years, 2018, hindi nyo binabasa yung mga special provision ko, lahat ng ahensya, nakalagay na yan, naka-incorporate. Hindi lang sinusunod. Kaya sa 2019, nakalagay naman po, provision of bike lanes and pedestrian safe sidewalks as well as roadside tree planting, because this is a reiteration of previous year's special provisions ko. But it remains ink on paper. It's not being implemented. Let's implement it this time. So your budget will only go to plenary once there is a commitment and a hard copy program. We will have a specific PowerPoint presentation for the committee on ayusin nyo yung inyong road system, hindi lang Laguna Lake. Iala Laguna Lake nyo lahat ng iba na kaya. Pwede bang yung Manila Bay area, or parang ginawa ni Minority Leader, we recognize Senator Drilon, bakit kaya ng Iloilo? Bakit makakayanan ng Laguna Lake? Ba't hindi kaya sa iba? So, can we do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Under the please don't ask us for extra funds. You can get your funds somewhere and put it there, or just re-engineer it and augment the planning. Kayang-kaya ng utak ni Yusek Cabral yan. So, yun lang. Ngayon, pedestrian lane kailangan din. So, I know the engineers might go like that. liliit ang pangkotse. Okay lang yan. Paano? I don't know how you do that. Liliit ang may pedestrian at merong bike lane. Especially yung mga lugar na may tubig. For example, in Berlin, in Frankfurt, even, you know that, you've traveled. I really have respect for people who have bike lanes and pedestrian lanes because you give it to the people. These are the commons Huwag sinasakop ng kotse, na driver lang at saka isa o dalawang tao. Nagawa nyo sa Iloilo. Amsterdam, yeah. Ang number one to supporter rito, I'm sure si Pia. Tell mo kay Pia Cayetano. I'm gonna tell Kong Pia, she'll be so happy about this. But really, it's been in the GAA actually, and I just know that it's not being followed. So, Secretary Mark, we will have a enumeration of areas where will you have bike lanes and pedestrian lanes within the existing budget. You just have to replan or re-engineer your existing road systems. And another thing, during the time of the Estrada administration, Secretary Vigilar implemented a tree planting project when applicable of indigenous trees. It was a department memorandum. In the same 1998-99, I was a very young senator, 20 years ago. Can you kindly reiterate that? Hanapin nyo sa files niyo, kung hindi, tulungan ko kayo, na lahat ng kontraktor ay hindi mababayaran at hindi maaring tapusin ang proyekto kung walang pinag-aralan, hindi para mag-comply, magtanim ng ilang seedling na mumurahin, hindi. Kailangan tree growing program where applicable on public infrastructure, roads. Yon. So, we will have a separate presentation on existing project kasi binigyan nyo sa amin tong strategic infra, wala pa yung pedestrian and bike lanes. You will come back to us, ano dyan ang i-amend nyo to accommodate that Senate request. I hope I'm supported by my colleagues. Yes. No, I was 15. Ilo nga, okay. May we hear from the minority lead? Ay, no. Panahon pala ni JB. Paano mo ginawa? Ituro mo. Yeah, teach us how to do it because he did it in
Mark
Iloilo.
saw it in Iloilo.
Yes.
We have an 11-lane highway. One lane is a bike lane, right in the middle of the road. Red brick.
Yung highway, hindi Esplanade.
Hindi. No. Yes. Huh? We have an 11-lane highway, one of which is a bike lane. So 10 lanes for the cars.
Yes.
One lane for the bikes. So we did it 5 years ago.
But even in two-lane streets, saan kami nagpunta nun? Let's say, in the little town of Mainz, M-A-I-N-Z, in Germany, 1 or 2 lane streets, merong pedestrian lane, merong bike lane. Kaya nila, i-adapt natin dito. At pag gawin mo yan, kukopya lahat. All LGUs, believe me, will pass ordinances. And it's gonna change how we live. We're gonna be healthier people. Okay? So we will have a specific briefing hearing for that. Yeah, Senator Ejercito, you have the
Madam
floor.
Chair, may I just very quick, may I just ask an inquiry? This will not be the last hearing. You made mention that there will be another hearing because there's a caucus at 12 noon. I was wondering, Madam Chair, what's going to happen? And if my name is also listed as one of the senators, those senators who will ask questions today?
Yes, I recognized you earlier, and the order of questioning is according to the arrival. It's the time of Senator JV. Senator Lacson yielded to the other senators. We'll go back to him.
And my
later
point
on.
is that there will be another hearing, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
I wanted to continue till 3 p.m. to try to finish, but we have a caucus. I was informed by the
Yes.
Senate President.
Thank you, Madam
So
Chair.
sorry, I wanted to continue till 3, but I was informed there's a caucus.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. To continue again from a driver's point of view, I'd like to raise some points. I have observed that there are a lot of bypass roads being constructed right now, which is good, no? Kasi talagang most of the key cities in all the most provinces are really also congested. But my concern, I saw some in Quezon, in Tarlac, Bulacan, Batangas, Laguna. But my concern, Mr. Secretary, baka mamaya magawa tayo ng access road, baka mamaya tayuan na rin ng commercial later on because ang nangyari sa atin, yung MacArthur Highway, Macarlica Highway, became centers of commerce, no? Especially in the provinces. So that's why there was a need to construct bypass kasi nga yung mga highways natin, di ba tama, yung sa Cabral. So ngayon, siguro what would the department do to ensure that this will not happen anymore, no? Na yung pong mga main highway, kaya nga highway ang tawag doon, dapat high speed doon no? Para mas mabilis ang movement. Kaya lang, naging poblasyon na siya. And I observe also in a lot of, sa pagmumotor ko kasi, nakikita ko, talagang halos sentro na, naging poblasyon na ang karamihan ng, especially in the provinces. So, what will the DPWH do? Kasi you're going to be spending billions, no? For the bypass roads.
So I agree kasi minsan napapansin ko rin minsan pag may bagong road tapos biglang may tatayo ng vulcanizing shop sa parang wala but to answer Madam Chairwoman, one is that I think ultimately yung in terms of the difference between highway and expressway kasi ang gusto talaga na magkaroon ng expressway meaning pag expressway wala nang enclosed system. So that's the concept behind the Luzon Spine Expressway. So lahat ng areas sa Luzon dapat ma-cover din ng expressway. So pag but then of course then ang magiging alternative nila yung bypass road. So yung through yun yung magiging role ng expressway. And then, yung mga ginagawa ngayon, yung mga bypass, yun yung magiging, yung option nila kung gusto nila ng free road. I encourage the local government also. Siguro kailangan, personally, I don't want sana magkaroon ng, yung hindi pwede magtayo ng structure doon. And if applicable, kung minsan kinukuha namin yung highway, yung right-of-way, but otherwise, in some cases, I'm gonna make it an enclosed system. So, yun ang concept. Pero nag-agree ako sa iyo, Senator, that...
Kasi nangihinala ko, maganda ngayon ng mga bypass. You cut travel time by really so much, no? So, nangihinala ko, baka billion, tapos mamaya gawin. Later on, baka 5-10 years from now, maging poblasyon na rin yun. So, I think the local government, you really have to empower the local government to enforce na talagang hindi matayuan siguro along the highways ng commercial establishment. And then next doon po sa what's the policy on asphalt overlay kasi ang napansin ko mukhang ang dami ngayong asphalt overlaying because I can remember during the time of Secretary Babe Singson, I think he had ewan ko lang, correct mo ko siguro si Jose Cabral, nandun na, Jose Cabral, meron bang memorandum si Singson din, na yung parang itigil yung asphalt overlaying, parang